Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Bryant Jennings, the American heavyweight, has stopped Alexander Dimitrenko in the 9th round of their fight in Atlantic City. But it wasn't without controversy and it didn't come easy. So Jennings, he was floored in the 4th round and then he stopped Dimitrenko in the 9th with a somewhat controversial stoppage. So not everyone is going to be happy about the stoppage, but it was the 3rd time that Dimitrenko was knocked down in the fight, twice in the 8th and then finally in the 9th. But yeah, I saw that stoppage and thought, yeah, I don't know about that. But overall, Jennings looked pretty good. He was relatively dominant, started well, he was controlling the action, he was working his jab well in those early rounds. And Alexander Dimitrenko, if you've seen him fight before, you know that he always looks a little bit ungainly, a bit unsteady on his feet. And it was again in this fight, you know, the footwork is not good. And then seemingly out of nowhere, against the grain in the 4th round, bam! An overhand right from Alexander Dimitrenko to the side of Bryant Jennings' head, sort of just by the ear, floors him. Jennings went down and he was pissed. It was against the grain and he knew he'd sort of defensively gone to sleep and he got caught. Alexander Dimitrenko has a decent left hook and a big overhand right. That's pretty much, you know, the sum total of his offense, you know, for large stretches in fights. He relies on those punches. And we've seen him stop Adrian Granat before, largely on the back of the right hand, the overhand right. And again, he deployed it, detonated it, and Jennings, he went down. But after that, you know, Jennings, he came back, sort of settled himself down, came back with the jab, and overall he was looking more composed, more polished in the 5th and 6th rounds. But, you know, Dimitrenko, he was also still trading well, getting a few nice body shots away. But by about the end of the 6th round or so, both these guys, they were looking tired. But Alexander Dimitrenko more so. He looked pretty drained. The pace of the fight was starting to get to him. Jennings was trying to take some of the action to the inside. And Dimitrenko, he was finding it hard to keep up. And in the end, he was sort of relying on one-off big punches. But at the same time, Jennings, he was also looking a bit tired. The jab started to go missing. But he sort of gathered himself. In the 8th round, he was dominant. So a left hook started off a good sequence for him, scrambled Dimitrenko's brain, and he avoided a follow-up big left hook again. He took a knee, and he was taken to account. And then a second knockdown, it occurred immediately, and it almost looked like, you know, it was a balance issue. You know, he was sort of clipped again, went down, and he was very lucky to survive the round. And it was getting to that point in the fight, if you've seen Alexander Dimitrenko fight before, similar to the Joseph Parker fight, where it almost looked like he didn't want to be in there, that he was looking for a way out. But to his credit, he did survive the round. And in round 9, he was looking okay. But then he ate an uppercut, and then a second big uppercut came in, snapped Dimitrenko's head back, and floored him. And the referee waved off the fight before Dimitrenko had even hit the canvas. It was that quick. And this is where the controversy kicks in, because in my view, it was premature. Dimitrenko, he was up and protesting immediately. Overall, it was a very disappointing ending to the fight. I think Jennings, you know, he was certainly in control and it was only going to go one way. But I do think that Dimitrenko, he had earned the right to a little bit more time. And yeah, I mean, if you see the replay of that, tell me what you think. Because I actually thought, yeah, it was premature. After the fight, Dimitrenko, he was salty as anything, saying, "I'm sad. It was not correct." And he said he was ready to get up, that he wasn't a child, he was a pro fighter after all. And he sort of said a, you know, sort of cluster of that sort of stuff, you know, 2 or 3 times, just sort of kept repeating himself. And then he said that he hoped he could get a rematch. And he says people would like to see a rematch. Not really sure if I'd like to see a rematch between the two. I mean, maybe that's wishful thinking on his behalf, but I did feel, you know, a little bit aggrieved on his behalf. Just, you know, maybe another sort of 10 or 20 seconds, Jennings could have got the job done and finished it, but it's gone now. We will never know. But Jennings certainly was on top. It was the 3rd knockdown of the fight. The referee obviously thought, I've seen enough. And Dimitrenko in the 8th round, before that, he had given those sort of signals, that bad body language that, he was looking for a way out. And maybe the referee obliged in that situation. But yeah, a little bit premature. And Jennings, he after the fight said, or actually Andre Ward, he said he was okay with the stoppage. So he was part of the commentary crew for the fight. And he thought that the stoppage was fine. He thought it was a good stoppage. And he thinks Jennings is at the door of a world title. And I'll come back to that in a second in terms of the world title contention element. But Jennings, he said post-fight that he did what he had to do. And he sort of credits the win to him being in shape and being in good condition. And that he was a big dude, Alexander Dimitrenko. And perhaps he wasn't as sweet as he thought he was. And he thought overall it was a great fight. And the sort of fight that he needed. And he says he wants to progress, that he's ready for the top. And he said if they think it's sweet, they can come get it. And then unfortunately the ring interviewer tried to sort of round it out and he called him Brandon Jennings, which, kind of sort of soured it. And Jennings, he pulled him up immediately on that and sort of got him to correct it. Overall, apart from that one round and perhaps one or two others where it was, relatively even, Jennings was in control for the most part. Behind the jab, he was looking pretty good. Dimitrenko didn't like Jennings coming in, trying to get in close, and he was, trying to keep the fight at distance. Overall, it was an okay fight. I enjoyed it. And, certainly that knockdown in the 4th sort of galvanized Jennings, and, he came out with a bit more determination after that. But in terms of the what next, Bryant Jennings, on the strength of that performance, I don't think anyone is going to be quaking in their boots, in the top 10, having watched that. I mean, Alexander Dimitrenko, he's a perennial sort of fringe guy. He's, on the edge of a top 15 type thing. He's a high-level gatekeeper of sorts. And, I mean, you've got to respect these guys because sometimes the gate is closed. And, he showed that with Adrian Granat. If he can land big, he can get you out of there. So this sort of fight wasn't without risk. But Dimitrenko didn't really have enough, and he wasn't good enough. Jennings is solid fundamentals. He's a good inside fighter, and obviously he's got one of the longest reaches in boxing, and that was repeated over and over, and you saw the advantage in this fight against Dimitrenko. He had a bigger reach than the bigger man, so 84-inch reach. But if I was to sort of predict what next, I don't know if Jennings is going to be able to get any meaningful fights, the sort of fights that he would like to sort of get into immediately. It might be a case over the next year or so, maybe 18 months more likely, that he'll just have to work his way into a mandatory type position. And his promoter, Bob Arum, is obviously pretty tight with the WBO, so you'd imagine he will be looking to potentially go that route. But Jennings, it was a good win. Alexander Dimitrenko is a bit of a name. He's got, a few good wins behind him. Obviously, he was expected to win, but overall, he did his job and he did it well, apart from that one blemish in the 4th round. But on the strength of that, I don't think that the top guys in the division will really see Bryant Jennings as a massive threat. But, at the same time, I don't think they're going to be clamouring to fight him either, because he is a guy that could cause a few guys some trouble. But as it stands in the division, I think we're, in a position where these, champions at the moment are spoken for. So we have Deontay Wilder facing Tyson Fury. We have Anthony Joshua facing Alexander Povetkin. And on the strength of sort of what's been said recently in the media, it looks like Anthony Joshua will be, looking to have to face his WBO mandatory at some point. So that isn't set at the moment, but Bryant Jennings isn't really in position at the moment to sort of mount a challenge. And I don't really sort of see a situation in the next year where he's going to be offered a voluntary either. And let's face it, with the lack of profile, which I see as a real issue for Bryant Jennings, he's not a guy that's going to sell a massive amount of tickets. Is anyone clamouring to see Bryant Jennings in a world title fight next? Probably not. But, if he continues to look good, if he continues to notch up sort of, more wins where he's stopping guys, with some authority, and he did show some authority in stretches in this fight, well, he is going to build some buzz to his name. But he does need to work on his sort of social media and sort of his output on that. And yeah, it's sort of against his ideals in some respect. I mean, if you follow him on social media, you know what I'm talking about. He doesn't like to big up himself too much. He doesn't like to generate too much hype. You know, he doesn't like the fake beef, the bluster, that sort of thing. And a lot of his tweets, a lot of his posts on Instagram, they're more down to earth. They're sort of stuff that regular people would post. And, you know, he likes to sort of put quotes up, deep and meaningful sort of things, stuff related to food, you know, a little bit of training here and there. It's a sort of a smattering, but it's not the sort of average or, you know, usual stuff that a pro boxer would be pushing out on their social media channels. So, you know, I know that will come down to his values and the way that he wants to present himself to the world. But at the same time, there's a trade-off. He's not going to get some of the attention that he probably needs to get. Sure, he's looking to do his talking in the ring with his fists, but at the same time, you know, if he's not generating much buzz for himself outside of the ring, because it's a duo sort of thing. You can't just do the talking in the ring these days. You've got to generate some attention outside it. Whether he can do that just on the strength of the strategy that he's got in place at the moment, which seems to be no strategy, is that, yeah, I don't know if he can use his channels to help his own cause here. And Top Rank, they always seem to be a little bit low profile in the way that they push their fighters. And he does need to stay active. He does need to keep getting more fights. And, you know, he can't afford to be on the shelf for too long. And a lot of these guys end up not fighting for 6 months and they kind of just disappear into the ether in the meantime because you don't hear their name. And if they're not talking at large on social media or getting up in people's faces, people forget about them. And yeah, if he's not a great talker in terms of the trash talk, that sort of thing, well, it sort of takes away an element that he can sell himself as well. So, you know, I think realistically, if he is going to get a world title shot, it's not going to come probably for 18 months to 2 years, if at all. If at all. And that's sort of, you know, it's sad to say, but at the moment, a lot of the top guys are booked up, and Bryant Jennings is just another good guy, dangerous, another sort of, you know, why would I need to fight him voluntarily? Yeah, so, I mean, he may struggle to get those top fights that he wants to be in, but he needs to try to stay active, try to get some decent fights. And I know there's a lot of people that also think that Joseph Parker fight, that would be a good fight for Parker to come back with, fight Bryant Jennings. It would be a good fight, but it's certainly a very risky fight for both. Joseph Parker, can he afford to take on a Bryant Jennings and, you know, say he did lose 3 losses on the bounce? That could end Joseph Parker's career. Can he afford to take on someone of the caliber and quality of Bryant Jennings? I think Parker would look at that fight against Dimitrenko and sort of, you know, do a bit of a triangle theory in terms of, well, I took out Dimitrenko way easier than you did. Perhaps I've got a good shot in this. But I think Jennings would actually look at Parker and go, well, he can be hit. You know, potentially I can work him to the body and do some things that Dillian Whyte did to slow him down and potentially sort of outpoint him or stop him. So there is a case, you know, for this fight, but I don't see it happening next. Maybe a year away, but I don't see it happening next. What do you make of it all? What did you think of Alexander Dimitrenko, and what did you think of Bryant Jennings? Were you surprised it got stopped so soon? Were you surprised that Bryant Jennings hit the deck? He showed a lot of heart, came back, he was poised, and he got the W. Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.